In this lesson, we're going to start to discover or be reminded about what ratios are. So this is just a bit of a basic intro to ratios, and we'll look at some more complicated calculations in other lessons. So first of all, just what they are. Ratios are used to compare amounts of the same unit. So it's really important to remember that point. Okay, these are going to be the same units, because later when we look at rates, we look at comparing amounts of different units. So for example, you might see a ratio written like this, which we say as 3 parts to 4 parts, or we can just simplify to 3 to 4. You can also see ratios written in this form, which looks almost like a fraction, 3 over 4, and less commonly as a decimal or a percentage, okay, which those two make sense. For this one, 3/4 is 0.75 or 75%. So here's an example just to look at simplifying a ratio. So the ratio of stride length for a dad to his child is 1.1 metres to 55 centimetres. So to first of all write this as a simplified ratio, we must make sure these are the same units. So it means we need to either change metres to centimetres or centimetres to metres. Now usually it's easier to convert to the smaller unit because it'll make it a bit easier in the next step. So 1.1 metres to 55 centimetres, if we change 1.1 metres, it ends up as 110 centimetres to 55 centimetres. Now the next step is to simplify, which basically means cancelling down kind of like a fraction. So we're looking for a number that goes into both parts of the ratio evenly. So in this case 55 goes into both of those numbers, and it goes into 110 twice and into 55 once. So we get a ratio simplified of 2 to 1. And once you've got it simplified like this, you can leave the units off. So we just say it 2 to 1. What does this mean in this case? Well, it means that the dad's strides when he's walking with his child are twice as big as his child's strides. So 2 parts to 1 part means they're twice as big. Okay, equivalent ratios. So you need to be able to make equivalent ratios. These can be very handy, particularly when you're cooking, if you're needing to adjust a recipe to a different number of people. You might also see this, say, in cars for engine ratios. And you will also come across ratios if you happen to discover the fine art of cocktail making. So, equivalent ratios are made by multiplying all parts of the ratio by the same number. Okay, so we're going to look at an example of 3 to 5, 3 parts to 5 parts. So if we multiply both parts of the ratio by 3, the equivalent ratio would be 9 to 15. Okay, so pretty straightforward so far. Alright, since we're not necessarily up to the age of using cocktails yet, we're going to just look at a bit of a non-alcoholic drink. So the following basic recipe is given for a fruit punch. So we've got a litre of orange juice, 500 ml of cranberry juice, and 1.25 litres of ginger ale. Now in this case we're going to say that we've got no measuring devices to make the punch. We've only got an old container that has no indication of capacity. Okay, and we want to know how we can ensure that the mix is going to be right. Because if you put too much or too little of one thing in, obviously it's going to change the taste of it. So, first of all, we're going to simplify this ratio. Okay, so the two things we need to do to simplify, make the units the same, and then cancel down. Alright, so if we've got 1 litre to 500 ml to 1.25 litres, we're going to change to the smallest unit, which is the mils. So 1 litre is 1,000 mils. 1.25 litres is 1250 mils, so we end up with something a bit like that. Then to cancel down, the number that goes into all of those, we can see that 10 goes into all of them because they all end in 0. That's not the smallest, sorry, the biggest number though. The biggest number that goes into all of these would be 250, so we can cancel down all the way to 4 to 2 to 5. What that means is that for this recipe, this particular mix, we need 4 parts orange juice, 2 parts cranberry juice, and 5 parts ginger ale. So it is important with ratios to make sure that the order you write your ratio in is the order you were talking about earlier. Okay, it needs to be the same corresponding order. So now that we know the ratio, we can use that container to measure 4 parts, 2 parts, and 5 parts and get the right mix. Now if you need to make more, so let's say you've made that using the container that you've got, but you need to make more because there's not enough, then we can make an equivalent ratio and you're still going to get the same taste in the drink. So for example, if you need to double what you had, we would double everything in the ratio, so 8 to 4 to 10, and then you'd need to make 8 parts orange juice, 4 parts cranberry, and 10 parts ginger ale. So a pretty useful application of a ratio.